How do you take? You snooze, you lose.
Good evening. Hi, hello. Welcome to Theology with a Twist. We're so happy you're joining us today. The restrooms are back there around the corner. Up here, if you do not know, the restaurant and bar obviously is open, but if you want food, you have to go down and get it and carry it up the stairs. Yeah, Sarah will chauffeur your food. A big thank you to the Kutztown Tavern for having us. They let us use the space for free, and we appreciate that greatly. Following the 30 to 35-minute presentation, we will have 10 to 15 minutes of table talk, and then we'll use the rest of the time to ask questions to our speaker. We do have a few ground rules. Our purpose is to gather together in a setting where challenging and complex current cultural and religious faith issues are presented, shared, and discussed. We are not here to judge or change another person's beliefs, but rather to create a safe space for significant conversation. Although we want to encourage good discussion, please do not dominate the conversation to a point where others are unable to share their thoughts. And we believe if we can hold to this format, everyone will leave here enriched. If you want more information about Theology with a Twist, you can sign up on the email sign-up sheets that are on your table. In addition, there are little cards that say who our next speaker is next month. And if you are someone who needs continuing education credits, those certificates are on the back table on your way out. If you have any other questions, you can ask myself or Sarah. All right, now we're going to switch modes. All right, introducing our speaker today, the Reverend Dr. Steve Ohnsman is a graduate of Wilmington College of Ohio, Drew Theological Seminary in Madison, New Jersey, United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, and Alvernia University. Originally ordained as a United Methodist pastor, when Steve moved to Reading, PA, he served as the chaplain at Albright College and transitioned to the United Church of Christ. Since 1999, Steve has served as the senior pastor of Calvary United Church of Christ. He also serves as an adjunct professor and mentors clergy and congregations, particularly those navigating their first call. Steve is married to Dr. Christina Ohnsman, and they have 2 grown children, Matthew and Rachel. So, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. And I'm warning those of you who are not at a table, I need you at a table. Don't be antisocial, because we're going to be doing, yeah, that means you 3. We're going to be doing group work. We got some chairs over here, got a chair over there. I'm going to be moving around so nobody's safe, don't worry about it, but we really do need you involved. This is participation sport, not a viewer. Oh, that reminds me, if you have a phone, could you silence it, please? This is also on Facebook and will be loaded onto our YouTube channel. So I'm really happy to be here with you. Over on this table, I have a list of, I just found there's 24 resources. There's lots more than this. This is just what I have on my Kindle and on my desk. I didn't even look through my library. Just some different resources of books that might help you understand the changing world we're in religiously. And this is, just by luck, or God's grace, who knows, a follow-up to last month. Who was here last month? A lot of you were here, yes. And the discussion about why the church is where it is demographically. This is going to be, that was national and global. This is going to be local. And honestly, all church is local. I mean, I love the national church. I love the conference. I love the association. That's all the UCC talk. But the local church is where it's at. So we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. I want to begin with something that's written by Janine Adam. Janine is a spiritual director, does some really great work in our area. And she wrote this, it was published on the website, and it is, in many ways, a prayer. You said yes, I'm here, and said it more than once, thinking it was your job, your work, your ministry. You tried to meet all needs when it was your own soul that was in distress. You longed for newness, a fresh start when the door swung open into liminal space. You found footing, yet others stumbled in fear, pulling you down as they fell. You found yourself invisible, a voice unheard and gifts overlooked except to mock. Who do you think you are? They cried. Never one of us. You sought to feed and nurture, generous with offering possibilities for growth. The seeds you scattered withered, though, being planted in soil without much depth. You loved in hope that the bitter would turn sweet. There were glimpses of change, to be sure. In the end, the sourness rose too often, eluding the strength of love. You stood in your authority, holding firm to truth and, with a capital T, truth. At times, a lamb led to slaughter. What to do but hold fast as words like knives flew at your heart. Then Jesus wept, holding out his hands. See what my own love cost me. See the price I paid to be your servant. Now touch your wound to mine, he said. Touch and be blessed. Beautiful. Here's the preamble. I don't care about your politics. I want you to put your faith hat on, whatever that faith might be. you think about, if you're a Christian, the words of Jesus, not the news you watch. And I want to be reminding you that trash talk and gossip are not Christian values. Kindness and love are. So the question I want to start with is, can we admit to the toxicity that is in our churches? How are decisions made? What matters to your membership? Is Jesus put first? Do people get mad and yell at each other or talk behind each other's backs? The church I grew up in was a terrific group of people. Very small. In a place that was 30 years ahead of the rest of the country as far as decline goes. We were doing that way ahead. We were trendsetters. But there was one family. I'm going to tell you some stories from my life, and we're going to tell each other stories from our own lives. So there was this family in our church, and they were a little prickly. Anybody have prickly families in your churches? And this little church, this is before they had automatic, heat things. Oh, by the way, we're going to talk the whole time. We're going to have a lot of discussion, so you can ask questions at any time, okay? So they took turns as a family to turn the heat on early so the church wouldn't be frozen. And once, very cold winter Sunday, they forgot. We get to church and it's like 35 degrees. And this lovely Mrs. Birchie, she was the woman of my dreams, my whole childhood, taught me my entire Sunday school, is really the saint that I hold out there, mentioned, wow, it's cold. Now, she was really old. I mean, I think she was like 55. The wife of the man who was supposed to turn the heat up got furious. Chewed Mrs. Birchie out in front of everybody. Us little kids standing around there going, what? And stomped off, never to be seen again. And that was my first taste of people being mean in church. And it stuck with me in detail all these years later. But I will make a caveat. I've heard people get upset and say they left the church because they said hello to somebody who didn't say hello back. Which is so immature. Anybody here have a bad day? You ever have when you're caught in your thoughts and you don't see somebody and you're just moving along? I mean, we all have that. If we want some grace from people, we need to give a little grace back, right? So, if you leave for that reason, there's probably a lot of other reasons that went before it. But who among us doesn't have like a dozen reasons why we should leave church? I mean, most of us could probably pick out a bunch of reasons why our church stinks. And I'm the pastor, I'm selling this deal, and I can tell you there are things about my congregation. This is my 25th year there. There are still things there that I wish I could change that I haven't changed yet. But I have an advantage. I am more stubborn than the Pennsylvania Dutch. I out-stubborned them, and will continue to do so. And I'm also really cheap. I could have been born in Berks County. I'm so cheap. Boom, thank you. Okay, so let's move on. The first church I served, I was still in seminary. I'd been turned down for ordination because I was too committed to the theology of John Wesley. I was a United Methodist. Imagine that. And so I got turned down. That was the reasoning. And someone appointed me to a church because he thought they were wrong. And it turns out that, 40 years later, he was wrong. They were wrong. And there was a guy in my church named Fred. He was the president of the largest bank in the county. So he was a big shot. He was the president of the Boy Scout of America Council, and he was also a heavy drinker. And I'm 24 years old. I'm an idiot. I mean, I'm still probably an idiot, but I was a real idiot at 24. And he calls me, he's drunk, he calls me and he says, Steve, I want you to come and say grace at the Boy Scout thing, and it's this huge deal. Hundreds of people there. I said, well, what is it? And he told me, I said, well, I have a Bible study that night. Let me check with the folks and make sure it's okay. He said, well, I pay half of your salary, and you need to do what I tell you to do. And I said, well, I know what my salary is. That doesn't impress me. less sarcastic now. I'm just smarter about it. Now, he was furious. He stayed with the church, but still, he was really nasty about it. My Bible study had grace, let me go. I said a prayer. Everything went fine. These were some of the first experiences. Let me tell you about Mrs. Mao. So Mrs. Mao was about 4 feet tall, had escaped East Germany, gotten away from the Nazis. And she was a member of this church. And she had this very thick German accent. And she had a thing for me. Now, she was 86 years old, which makes no difference because 86, whatever age, you're still 18 inside. And she comes over, she'd give me blueberry muffins. I wasn't married yet, and I was much smaller. So she'd give me, she wanted me to get there. And she'd show up with stuff. She shows up one day with a suit that had belonged to her husband. And it was a perfect fit. So I can understand now why she liked me, because I reminded her of her husband. And then I got married. And the romance ended. So my wife, before we got married, would come up on occasion on a Sunday, and she'd come to church, and she'd try to meet people, because she's just that kind of person. And she walks into church one Sunday, and she's early, and the only person there is Mrs. Mao, sitting in her pew, the only person. And she goes up and says, "Oh, hi, I'm Steve's fiancée, can I sit with you?" And she says, "What?" I said, "No other pews." And to my future wife's credit, she said, "Well, there are, but I want to know you." And sat with her, and they became fast friends. But that could have turned a lot of people off, couldn't it? So I think, let me fast forward to now when I'm interviewing at Calvary. And they selected me, even though I was coming out of the Methodist tradition, which made some people really angry. And I found out later that there was a phone call campaign against me. Yeah, people were calling and saying, "Don't vote for him because he's no good. He's too young." He's 39. That young. A driver's license, I was married, kids. So, a bunch of stuff happened. I don't want to dwell on it, but this is one example. Then, my wife and I, for one of our anniversaries, we went to Jamaica. We went to this church in Jamaica, and it was a big church. We were the only white folks there. And they had a church lady. You know the church lady skit from Saturday Night Live from the 80s? Yeah, so this is a Jamaican church lady. And she spent half an hour haranguing people. There was a couple there, and she said, "Oh, I see that so-and-so is here. We haven't seen them in so long. We thought they were dead." There was supposed to be a baptism, but the father hadn't shown up yet. And she says, "Well, we're hoping he makes it because he is a drinker." Half an hour of this. So, it's not just here that we have people doing mean things in churches. We have tables up here, or chairs up here at these tables. If you want to join us, come on in. Now, there's a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper at every table, and somebody has a pen. And as you have ideas or thoughts, you can write them down there and share them with us. I want group discussion. So please turn around. I know I'm entrancing, but turn around and look at each other. Please engage. And I'm going to ask you questions one by one. I want you to discuss them. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, but not that long because I know we're on a time clock here. Great to see your lovely face. Okay. I want you to spend a couple minutes. This is a really important question. How do you define Christian values? What are Christian values to you? Go.
Some people need specific guidance. Yeah. And the golden rule, that's in most people.
That is a really good point, though. That's part of the greatest commandment. That's love one another as I love you. That takes the place of all the others.
Where do you go to kindergarten? Did you go to kindergarten? We did that kindergarten. He went to one.
Theoretically speaking.
Oh, okay. But, you know, I say every kid.
I know you did.
But the other thing too is about forgiving. 40 what times 40 or whatever. You gotta be forgiving. Oh my yeah, the longest I held one was maybe a year. But you think about being angry when you're rationally seated, you know, and it's ugly. This is crazy.
They always say you don't forgive a person when you forgive someone, it's not really for the other person, it's for yourself.
Yeah, now it's true. Because they probably might know you're mad at them.
You just complimented us for doing it very well. You just pointed at storytelling.
So much better. He's got these magic hearing aids here that he does on his phone, but I don't know. Block out the background. Whenever we come here to eat, it's nice, you know, downstairs.
Okay. I know it's not enough time, but you know, we have to move on. All right, let me. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to shout out some stuff. On the 9th of November, I posted on Facebook a question: tell me when the church has been mean to you, when it's been kind. Most of the stories I got were about meanness. Some was kindness, but mostly meanness. And that really was shocking to me because I was hoping. Let me read two right now. I was 19 and looking for work, just needed a little help. I was even a Sunday school teacher. I asked the church for a food box that they gave out once a month to those in need. I was told that unless I had a welfare card and was actually collecting unemployment, I didn't qualify for one. Never mind that I just asked for food and nothing else. Yep, my own church turned me away. On the other hand, this woman wrote, I had the opposite experience. My church emailed me. They said, we know you're a single mom. We'd like to help single moms at Christmas, and offered me a giant gift card. Giant store, not I said, no, I didn't need it, but I'm not on any government help, and they still offered to help me. They also would give me cards and $20 that I just put right back in the collection basket. They were very compassionate and helpful in all my experiences. Even offered to help me help for CCD classes since I have 3 kids and so there's good news out there and bad news. What are the values? Just shout out the values. What do you think are Christian values? Passion. What else? Shout them out.
Community.
Love, community. Conversation. Guidance. Forgiveness.
You define values by how you act.
How you act. Right? Not just what you say. How you act. Love God.
Live like Jesus.
Live like Jesus. Well, that's it to know. Now you're talking. That's the point.
Yeah, it's risky.
Yeah, it is.
It's very risky.
It's really, really tough. What else?
Grace.
Grace.
Welcome is Christ, welcome us.
Welcome is Christ, welcome is Christ. Now, we sometimes live that, we sometimes don't. We sometimes live that, we sometimes don't do that. Let me tell you a couple other stories. My son, now 24, has autism. He also had other issues and had 2 surgeries before age 2, and then says, I think your wife did one of them. Yeah, probably. He had some issues, but overall didn't behave too poorly. I was asked to stop bringing him to church, but to please keep bringing him on Sunday school as they wanted his age group teacher to quit. This was the church I was confirmed at and married at. But they asked me not to bring a child. There's a couple very long ones here. Let me just give you one more. When I was younger, I was attending a Baptist church. I was getting ready to celebrate Halloween by handing out candy, allowing my children to dress up. I was told by my Bible study group and the pastor's wife that Christians did not participate in Halloween. That comes from Hebrew scriptures. It's like 2 things that don't allow a witch or whatever. That's why they don't like Harry Potter. I was told I was not as far along on my walk as they were. That I was less of a Christian than they were. Even made to feel like a bad mother. I was looked down on. They left me out of the courtroom because I chose to allow my children to celebrate Halloween. They even left a box of Bibles on my porch and told me to hand them out instead of candy to the Halloweeners. I do not know if this counts as being treated poorly, since celebrating Halloween was my choice, but it certainly made me feel distant and not part of the church. She then asked me what we thought about it, and I said, oh, that's just dumb. It's just dumb behavior. It's just Halloween, for God's sake. Move on. All right. Next question. You have some idea about what Christian values are. Now, specifically for you and your congregations that you belong to, how do you show the community that you believe in these values? And let me say this at the risk of getting you mad, but I probably got you mad already, right? So let me just say this at the risk of getting you mad, that if your church knows you more about you as a place where they can buy really good candy or pies or go to a dinner than they do about anything else you do, you might have a problem. How does your church live out the values that you just said we believe in? Go ahead, go. You got 5 minutes.
Run a food pantry. Yeah. Very good. Gary. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, you are. Yeah, I would think. That was
I'll give you a minute to wrap up the story. All right, I'm going to come to each table, and I want one story from each table. Just one story from each table. We're going to start here. Who wants to tell a story? Hey, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. How our church will be missed. Well, we have food pantry, we have friendly doors, we do an opportunity house, we do the Salvation Army gifts. It just goes on and on. I think we don't do this with any suppers for the sake of the neighborhood. We do other things. So I think we would be missed if that was happening.
Okay, thank you. Who at this table wants to tell? One thing that the church does. Go ahead.
We have 4 blood drives a year that we sponsor, and we bake for the blood drives. So people come to our blood drives sometimes just for the lemon squares.
You got the 11 square. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'll pay for a lemon square. Who has a story? Here, use it. Speak to it.
I'm a member of Trinity here in Kutztown with the stranger on the bench. If you haven't, within the last 2 or 3 years, we went to go RIC, Reconciling in Christ. Not to accept diversity, but celebrate diversity. And it has transformed our congregation. Not everyone, some folks left, but there are folks coming because we are accepting and celebrating everyone who walks through the door. And it's transformed the whole climate.
So the congregation I served was the first open and affirming UCC congregation in the county, well, actually for quite a distance. And we lost about 20% of our members. And it was tough. I mean, it was really tough for a couple of years. But then folks started to come because we were trying to do the right thing, right? So, good. Someone here.
There's like 17 clergy people sitting at this table. Nobody wants to say a word.
At our church, we're very much involved with the Scoop Valley Food Pantry, so we support that, and we work with the other churches in the area to also lend their support.
Who here?
Well, one thing that wasn't said by other groups was the hosting of baccalaureate, participating in high school graduations. Something I'm thinking of is that I think the church is instilling in individuals the ideas to do other things on a soul basis, not necessarily as a group. So I think there's other things being done that aren't accounted for.
Yes, thank you.
And by the way, let me speak to this. This is in the town that I live in. I was not, both my kids graduated from Wyomissing. I was not allowed to participate in baccalaureate because one of the people who had been part of it had tried to keep the Jewish community out. So to make sure that that wouldn't happen, you had to serve a church within the boundaries of the school district. That's why they came up with that. Yes, but somebody was trying to keep them out because they were Jewish, because their ignorant thought that this was a Christian thing, not a ecumenical thing. And so I sadly sat there and moaned, and then thanked them for welcoming the Jewish community into this really important thing. Yeah. Sometimes you got to make choices, right? You got one here?
Our church is in Exeter, and every year we do a block party where we have food trucks and bounce houses and live music, and we also we collect to fund vouchers for all of the local first responders leading up to that. So the local firemen, the local police, and the local ambulance guys all get a free meal ticket to come to that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. How about who here has this?
We're from Leon County, so we're in the minority here. And we're Lutheran, we're really in the minority here. We do several things. In Leon County, we do the Allentown Resolution, which is primarily religious-based. I was telling you, we feed them once a month on a Sunday morning we go out. But our biggest thing I always like is that we have what's called a little white church. And it's only a little box, maybe 2 foot by 2 foot high with a slot at the top. And we put that out, and it'll be announced that there's people in need. No money amount, not what they're in need, can you donate? And I have to tell you, I'm just telling these fine folks that we always exceed what the people ask. And most people ask very little. They really ask very little. And so that's always a great thing, because it just comes from the heart. Everybody just gives what they can give, and these people are taking care of them.
All right, who's over here?
So I'll speak on behalf of the partners of the Rejoicing Spirits Ministry. We're blessed at St. Paul's to work with about 8 or 9 other churches, and we have a worship service for people with intellectual disabilities the first Sunday of every month at 3 o'clock. And it's the place where that autistic person would be welcomed, not told to sit down, and not told to be quiet. It's really a wonderful thing.
I think your original question was about values, right? And so we obviously dove a lot into missions, kind of where everyone's brain went. We kind of talked about 2 things that weren't that type of mission. One being Rejoicing Spirits, which is worship-based. And I think our church does really well as welcoming people. I know when I had my call Sunday there, sorry, Dad. My dad came to see my call Sunday, and after church, he was like, wow, this is what church should feel like. And we're really good at welcoming kids. We've had a bunch of new families join, and no one's hollering or shushing anybody. And when kids are being fussy, old ladies turn around and tell the mom they're a great mom. And I think it helps also that my very wiggly toddler is sometimes under my arm while I'm leading worship. And people are like, well, my kid couldn't possibly be as bad as the pastor having a whole lot of her toddler under her arm. And so I think it's very much a come as you are, and we do that really, really well.
Okay, and I know there's lots of other stories, but I wanted to make sure that we got at least one from every table. And I know there are churches doing great things. And so here's the thing. The church is in a tough time right now. It's in a time of renewal, I think, a time of reformation. We can sit around and moan about it all we want, but the truth is you cannot get to reformation without changing stuff and doing God's work and releasing yourself of some of the, can I say, crap that we have done for too many decades. Let me read two more. Members of my church attempted to silence me because I refused to say homosexuality was a sin. Therefore, anyone who was gay, he said a gay, was a sinner. There was a motion to remove me from the position of deacon in the church. When I would not abide by their biblical interpretation of the sin, they thought, I was ostracized by many other deacons and church members. On the other hand, when I was 5 years old, I lived in the Bronx on a street with a Roman Catholic church and a rectory where priests lived. Without my parents' knowledge, she's 5 years old, it was 1966, I took my tricycle around the block. When I started down the hill in front of the rectory door, I lost control and fell over. My heavy steel trike landed on top of me. I was stuck and started to cry. One of the priests came out to see what was going on. He righted my bike and helped me back on it. He admonished me not to ever take my tricycle around the block without my parents' permission again. I thanked him, but I said, you shouldn't have helped me. He said, why? I said, because I'm not Catholic, I'm Jewish. 1966. And he said, we are all God's children. We need a lot more of that kind of love and compassion these days. 1966. Okay. So we talk about some of the ministries we do and some of the changes. One of the things, the pandemic was awful, right? In so many ways. And it still is. It's still hounding us. It will hound us for a long time. But there were also some blessings, right? For me, one of the big ones was I could get rid of the last archaic nonsense that our church was doing. And we could start again. We could do things a little differently. We could simplify things a little bit, make them a little bit more. We had to do it for online, right? Yes. Praise God from all blessings. I mean, we have to sing that every time. If you don't use the King James Version at home, why do you use it in church? Or some of the things that are so, like the hymns that are so, the language is just so old. We are supposed to be a church of no time and this time, not that time. And most of our churches are stuck. I say this a lot in my church. Sorry, church folks. Where most of our churches are stuck in 1950 or 1850. We should be planning for 2050 and beyond. Because once we get close to 2050, we need to look to 2150. Things like that. Being stuck in the same kind of worship every single time with no changes and no, God has got to change, right? So why would we do that? Things like that. Well, we'll come for more of that. So the question of change is a really important question. And the church is always changing. In fact, the church that has changed the most over the centuries is, the Catholic Church. People think of it as stuck, right? But it is not stuck. I mean, they embraced Francis of Assisi. He was a nut job. And yet, he transformed the church with the work he did. They didn't embrace some people, like Martin Luther, because he was also kind of a nut job. Sorry, Lutherans, but he was. There are, the church should always be, we're part of the Reformed tradition. Reformed, end, right? No, we're reforming. We're supposed to always be moving forward. We're supposed to always be embracing new things. Because every blessed hymn that you love, what's your favorite hymn? Old hymn. Old hymn. What's that? Come Thou Fount. And great, Amazing Grace. Right, all these hymns, right? Lots of people hated those hymns at some point because they were new. When I was United Methodist, 1984, they produced a new hymnal. I don't know if there's a new hymnal since. Is there a Methodist? I know there's Lutherans put out maybe the best hymnal in history in recent years. But the Methodist, at that point, before that, the Methodist, I thought was an amazing hymnal. New Century, it's good and bad. I mean, personal opinion. So here's the thing about the Methodist hymnal. Nobody cared. They were told, we're going to have a new hymnal. Everyone, yeah, I like the old junky one. I know a little more about it. Who cares? So to drum up business, they did a questionnaire. And they sent it out to churches. What's your favorite hymn? What's your least favorite hymn? The favorite hymn in 1983 among United Methodists was How Great Thou Art. The least favorite hymn among United Methodists in 1983 was How Great Thou Art. So when I look and I see, we're going to sing, I walk through the garden alone, I go, Lord have mercy. But I know that somebody loves that hymn. But I also love Here I Am. And I also love hymns that were written this year. Look at your hymnals for the last 6 months. How many times have you sung a hymn that was written in the 20th century? Not the 21st century, the 20th century. Change is what we need to do. So here's the next group discussion. Change. How does your congregation embrace change? And specifically, what changes are needed that aren't being done, that you think will bring your Christian values to the world? I see you to say it again. How does your congregation embrace change? And what changes are needed that will bring your Christian values to the world that are not being done or are meeting resistance? Go.
I think it's generational. You know, like, I think generally speaking, aging for a lot of change. You know, you're accepting to that change. And this is very high awareness, or it's like full of change. I say, that was incompetent. I said, it's crazy. But I mean, you know, he's full of change. And people are generally accepting. Older than me, which is really old. Not bad. It's only 8 years. Yeah, they're a handful of members who have been there longer than my 70 years that I've been there. And those people are very resistant. You know, they're not, and I think it's our kids keep coming to church. You know, something has to get. We've got to make it more modern for them to come. I don't, you know, in that modern, you know, he's been talking about places where there's mothers and dumb mothers. So they find this space in the balcony because, you know, still in addition to the window. So there's a space in the balcony that is set up with rocker and things. People let their kids run around. You know, that kind of stuff. So exactly. See what I mean?
1 minute. Okay, we're gonna move on here. We're gonna move on here. Is there anybody here who is not Christian? I want to be sensitive to other faiths. We hosted a really amazing program last year about Christian nationalism, and this one woman at one table did this impassioned plea about how we should all work together, and she said, "After all, we're all Christians." And sitting next to her was the rabbi. Yeah. So we're going to start at this table, and I want someone who didn't speak to speak this time, if you could do that. And let's get to nobody likes change, right? We like what we like because we think it's good. We don't have beliefs that we think are wrong because that would make us dumb. So we all like things to be the way they are because we're comfortable. Okay, let's just put that, that's good. Okay, so now I really want to have you talk about the thing that could shine your faith light to the community. What's holding that back? How is that change being blocked? Is it being blocked? This table first. Anybody want to take a try at this? Here you go.
We're not handicap accessible. We have, our hall is in the basement, and there's no way for anybody in a wheelchair to get there. There is an acorn stair lift if you're brave enough to take it down a church basement, steps. It's brand new. They just replaced it, so. But there's 7 steps to get to the place where the chairlift is. So it's really, and I spend a lot of time in consistory saying, we need an elevator, and we have the chairlift, and so that's right.
Now, some of our churches, it's really hard to make that happen because we're in a historic district. So half of our space outside, we can't do anything to it. But and you can get to our sanctuary on a ramp, not ADA, it's too steep, and you can get to the basement, but you can't get from one to the other, and forget about the 3rd floor. Right, so that gets in the way. Also, money gets in the way, right? $200,000 for our elevator. Okay, well, that's another story. Let's go. Moving to this table.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that our church could use that would help invite people is that if we got our technology in order, our broadcasting technology. We don't have a camera, we just have a little iPad, and it's not great, and it doesn't swivel itself to follow who's in leadership doing different things. And why don't we have a screen up front? I know there's not a really good place for it, but we could figure it out. We just have it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Who here?
I can't think of a. You seem to change focus on me.
Oh, well, last question.
So, did he change focus?
Yes. That's what I did.
I taught for 39 years, so. But what I do want to say is, at Reformation, I sit on the Worship and Music Committee, and the Lutheran heritage is wonderful music. And yes, we have a wonderful hymnal. We have many wonderful hymnals. And at Reformation, we use all of them. And the director of music sits with hymnals and dates the pages. So we're not constantly singing the same, and we're all, what's the new one called?
All Creation Sings.
All Creation Sings. It's purple for you that are Lutheran. If you don't know it, it's out there. It's wonderful. We sing about hippopotamuses and whales, and the language is today. So that's what I'm going to have.
Good. Thank you. Who here?
Okay, give it here.
All right.
I'm the speaker. Well, we were talking about what our church can do, what we need to change, is we just have to keep moving with the times. We have to, if we want the younger generation to come, then we've got to find a way to make it inviting to them. We've got to work around their crazy schedules, because that's a big problem. And I think Main Creek does a pretty good job of it, but you always have the sticklers, like you said. I wanted this. I don't really want to see that change. But if we want the church to remain alive, we got to come up with something. I don't know what that is. We got to come up with something.
Figure it out. You're ready to go.
All right.
I think we need to find a way to bounce from worshiping the building instead of creating ministry beyond walls. That's something COVID taught everybody is we didn't need the building to do ministry.
The edifice complex. Edifice complex, yes. And now our building is a hub. We do less in our building, and other groups use it more. Right? I mean, there are some good things. Who's here? This table. Oh, you got your table. Look at this table.
You get in too easily.
I'm not picking you for my team. That's all there is to it. You're gonna switch.
No, what? One of the really nice things to come out of COVID is most of us have gotten rid of our hymnals, which has opened up the possibilities of all kinds of different music coming in, and it's made it easier to bring in a lot of newer hymns.
Following up on that, one of the best things that came out of COVID, how terrible COVID was the technology that we all learned to use. Our church came up with a great system so we can, listen on YouTube, Zoom, whatever. And it really is inviting to people who don't want to go out or can't. Even the young people, but they don't usually do that on a Sunday morning.
Right.
That's it.
But they watch it during the week. Okay. This table.
I look like a little funny guy, but I'm actually tradition. I think that when we have enthusiasm in our worship, that the old hymns are fine. We just need to instruct the younger folks to have an appreciation for them and to understand why they're singing. There's a theology in one of those hymns. And the reason we come to worship, to sing those hymns, is to glorify God. We're not here to attract folks just because it's fun to sing around on a Sunday morning. There's a very specific reason why we come to worship. And so I'm not ready to throw out things like the doxology. Like, for me, that's an important part of worship. If other people are laboring through it, maybe we need a refresher for why we are singing those things, why they are important. And that's our role as teachers for the generation that's coming behind us, to help them understand what it means to have a Christian faith. You don't have to bend that much. The beauty of Christianity is that it is actually simple when you look at it in principle.
My director of music calls it 7-11 music. Same 7 words 11 times, right? So there's depth of theology now. So how do we update those words? How do we be more inclusive, right? Use it in that way. How do we make a lot of the big box happy clappy churches, that's Diana Butler Bass, that's not me who said that, are using some of the more traditional hymns in different ways. So there is depth to them.
The change has to come with welcoming new people to your church, whoever they are and whatever age they are, and having them integrated into the church community immediately, not this, you gotta be here a year to know what's going on. And taking their new ideas that they're bringing and working with them and starting new ministries or new outreach, and that's where the change has to come. People come to church not because you're Lutheran or you're UCC or Methodist. They come because they want to belong to a community, and they want to belong to a community that is making a difference in the world. Praising God, but making a difference in the world, which is what Jesus taught us to do. So that is praising God. But that's why they're there. And if you don't have new people coming in and you're ignoring them and you're saying their ideas, well, maybe down the road, but not now, they're not going to stay.
I had one very kind lady in my church early on say, we just need to get more people in here like us. She meant white, middle to upper middle class people. That's what she meant. And I said, well, that's not true. That's not true. Let me read something else. This comes from a person who was hired as a church employee under the guise of one thing, but who got another, the old bait and switch, he says. After a whole lot of unnecessary negotiations, I arrived at the church. The first Sunday service was great. Afterwards, I went to the coffee hour. No one greeted me. No one. I went out of my way to greet people. I'm fairly good at body language. They turned inward shoulders. The eye contact I made turned unreceptive. I worked, no served, no worked. At this church for some time, I tried to lead, I tried to help, tried to spread God's message, yet I was met with no help, no love. There were some outside, uncontrollable factors, but make no mistake, what was promised and what was reality were two different items. I looked for help from church leadership, I looked for guidance, I looked to God, I looked everywhere. Seek and ye shall find, I could not find. Eventually, before I was fired, I left this church, beaten, bruised, and questioning my faith. So, Galatians 5. You were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love, become servants to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If, however, you bite and devour one another, take care that you are not consumed by one another. That's Paul writing somewhere around the late 40s, early 50s. The church was very young, and already they were devouring one another. So the truth about church is that it's made up of people, right? It's a perfect place, as one friend of mine says, until you open the door and you walk in. And then there we are, right? And that's okay because it's an organic thing. It's a living thing. But we are the body of Christ, imperfect as we are. However, there are bullies in our churches. Let's be honest. There are bullies, and they use their position, they use their money, they use their longevity, all the things that we've been talking about, right? That sort of keep folks away. And they use sometimes tradition as a way to keep the world at bay, to keep folks outside. And there's dysfunction in the church, and there will always be, right? We're never going to change that. That's a fact. All we can do is deal with it when we come across it, right? So here's the question as we head towards the end here. The end of this, not the end of time. I don't know anything more than you do. How do we have a come to Jesus moment in this very strange time? How do we heal toxicity that is in our church? How do we heal the brokenness in our congregations? How do we promote kindness and not niceness? Nice, for most of our history, has been an insult. Nice. To say somebody was nice was that they were vapid, they were shallow, they had nothing much to say. We're good at nice. We're not as good sometimes at kindness. How do we promote a sense of... I've met a lot of really nice racists, sexists, homophobes in our congregations, right? Don't we have them? We all do. Every time I go to a church, have gone to a church to serve it, I've gone ahead of time and I've walked around to the businesses around the church, and I've asked, tell me about that church. And most of the time, no, every time, this one mine included, people said, what church? Or if they knew the building was there, they didn't know it was still an active church. What church? How does the community know? That's the first place you start. And there are some really simple things you can do that even, before you start, don't even cost anything. Don't even, for example, I heard this one guy talking the other day about, don't call people who come to your church visitors. That makes them strangers. Don't call them visitors. Oh, for God's sake, don't ever say, oh, we have some visitors. Would you like to sit up and tell us who you are? Now, I'm the guy who gets up and goes, well, yes, my name is Steve, and my wife here is Chris. Would you stand up? I do that. But that's dumb. Why would you make someone do that? Anybody ever see the movie The Lonely Guy, Steve Martin? It was not very good, and it didn't do very well. But there's this amazing scene. He's single. There's a mate where he walks into a restaurant and he says, a table for one, and the lights go off and a spotlight comes on him, and music. And as he walks, the spotlight goes with him, and he's looking around, and he sits down, and the light stays on him. That's what we do when we call people visitors, when we put name tags on them, and we don't have name tags on, when we treat them as if they don't belong. Because if they don't belong, we don't belong. And if we belong, they belong. The church doesn't belong to us. It belongs to Jesus, right? So every person who comes in there should be treated as if they're a part of the community. They may never come back, but they're part of the community. Be careful about pronouns. You talk about the music and about different things. Lord's Prayer, maybe. You might want to... I mean, the Lord's Prayer that we use isn't in the Bible. Didn't exist until some decades later. It always has been changing. There's all kinds of different versions of the Lord's Prayer. God isn't male. If you didn't know that, sorry to burst your bubble. There's also no Santa Claus. But God is not male. Be careful about people's pronouns. Another lovely lady who would come up to, we had a couple of folks who were gender non-specific. It's hard to tell. They're very neutral. And I've been telling folks, just say, excuse me, my name is so-and-so. And she went up and said, sir. And dude was a lady. Never came back. Be careful how you use your language around people. Because we as the church, we are supposed to be different from the local coffee shop, or the bakery, or the hot dog sellers, or the chili, or the soup, or the... We're different. We offer them Christ first. That's what we do. And everything we do has to have Jesus present in that. So when we think about, even if you don't care about pronouns, they might. So we're supposed to care what people think. It's kind of like wearing masks, right? We were supposed to wear masks because it protected other people and you. A lot of folks didn't care about that, right? Didn't care. Whatever the science was, they didn't care. I had another woman who had served as an usher, and I mean, I knew she was kind of a loose cannon. I'm in church, and she goes, "Hey, Pastor Steve, there's a group of Puerto Ricans over there." And I started running, and I couldn't get to her before she said it again, louder. And I said, "We don't call people by their nationality or their skin color. We just say, you come over to me and say, oh, I just talked to them and they're lovely. Would you like to go meet them?" She didn't understand, and so we asked her to not be an usher anymore. And by the way, don't have ushers. Have greeters, have welcomers. Have folks who invite you into their home. One of the things we did a long time ago, I haven't said it in a long time because I haven't seen it happen, but you know the old joke about this is my pew? You know, but there's no other pews in the... And so I said to folks, think of that pew as your home, right? And when somebody comes and is sitting there, when you show up, because you might be late because something happened, right? You're sitting there and you go, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Can I sit with you? Can I get you a bulletin? You want to know where the bathrooms are? Instead of saying, or not saying, you've had this happen, right? You go on vacation, you go to church? Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I like to sit up front, which never causes a problem for sitting in a pew. But my wife likes to sit in the back, and we'll sit there, and you people will come in there and go, oh, guess I'll sit here then. Treat it, again, they used to put people's names on pews, right? In some traditions, they did. Congregationalists in New England, right? They would do that some other places. It's not your pew. It's Jesus' pew, right? So share it with the people who are coming to be part of the worship experience, who are not visitors, but part of the family. Be inclusive. If someone's missing from church, call them. You know what happened to my church is one of the things I really struggle with. I really struggle with this. People will come up to me and say, how is so-and-so? And I'll say, I can't say. how so-and-so is. Because I have confidentiality, but I'm saying that part, but I have confidence. If you tell me something, a secret, or you're sick, whatever, I won't tell anybody unless that person says, please tell me, put me on the prayer list, whatever. And what I will say is, why don't you call them? And they rarely do. And then the person who hasn't been called, they know they haven't been called, and they say, people in this church just don't care. And I said, no, they care. They just don't want to get in your business. Well, I got news. In the church, we have to be in each other's business a little bit. We have to care about each other. That's what it means to care about each other, right? To sort of wonder how, not talking about them behind their back, not trying to get information from the pastor that you're not going to get, at least from this one, but to literally care about a person's well-being enough to go through the huge labor of picking up that phone and calling them. I even say, I'll give you their number, and I do. And they almost never call. That's a way of being kind. If someone shows up and you don't know them, don't say, are you new here? Because they may have been away for 30 years, ticked off at somebody else who said, are you new here? And finally got the gumption to come back, and then you do that to them. You don't know who they are. They don't know who you are. So I would just go over and say, hi, my name is Steve. I don't think we've met. Because who owns the pew? Not you. You don't own the church. I don't own it. God owns it, right? It belongs to Jesus. We are just caretakers. We are the welcomers. We're the valets. We talked a little bit about worship. Analyze worship. Analyze how you consider inclusive language. Consider how you treat LGBT folks and women in the church. Remove the archaic stuff that embrace new things. We talked about this quite a bit. 2 years ago, at our Pennsylvania Southeast Conference meeting, United Church Christ, we had a long discussion during the meeting about COVID, about how it had changed our work in the church and our lives as people of faith. And I said something that got people upset. I said, one of the things about COVID is we discovered who the caring, compassionate people in our congregations are, and we've discovered who the jerks are. And some people gasped. But it's true, isn't it? Isn't it true? We had people not come back to church because I was very focused on the science and taking care of people and protecting everyone. About masks, about vaccinations, you can watch it online, that's okay, it's fine, we just want to keep everybody safe. And I was accused of being political. Okay. It's not political, it's science. They're different. So, we still did ministry, we did new things, as all of you probably did. But the reason we gave, not just the science, was that we care about each other. We care. And we want to do everything we can to make sure that people are safe. Anybody else come into this? How many clergy I know who left the ministry or left their churches because people in their churches just harassed them until they couldn't take it anymore? And you know, most of those pastors were women that I know of, because we still think that men think that they can push women around. I got away with it because I've been there a long time and I don't care what people think. And I said, no, you come and do church if you want, but I won't be there because I want to keep everyone safe. That's kindness. That's not niceness. Niceness would be to say, yeah, let's all get together and be nice with each other. And then we see some more people die. We have to care about other people more than we care about our own opinions. Mostly. And let me tell you, we were so careful that this past Sunday was the first time we did communion by intinction in our second service in 3.5 years. That's how careful we were. Yeah, some of you still may be. You're more careful than we are, probably, but that was pretty careful. Mostly, I think we need to err on the side of kindness knowing that we're not always going to succeed. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do our best. As I said in the beginning, if we want a little grace, like Jesus talks about forgiveness, if we want to be forgiven, we need to be forgiving others. If we want a little grace, we need to be graceful to others. If we want kindness in our lives, we need to show kindness to other people. And I'd rather, it's a meme now, I guess, but I'd rather err on the side of kindness than err on the side of meanness. The gospel can sometimes be used as a weapon. And that's not what it was made for. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much for coming. There's little flyers on your table of our next speaker for next month, so take those along, share it. There's also a if you'd like to get our emails about what's happening, just put your email on this and
Enjoying the
on your
return.
table, and we'll send you an email.
Do you?
And thank you for being here. We'll see you, hopefully we'll see you next month. You don't have to take, if you have dishes on your table, just leave them there and we'll take care of them.
Thank you.